Makes sense. Do you think that there are, well, in comparison, let's say someone training 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 3 days a week, where you do have a camp of people who train 3 days a week that say, and maybe they even train with high levels of effort, like quote unquote, Mike Mentzer style, really high intensity. And these people don't deload. They don't, or at least their bias is, I don't need a deload. I'll just take 2 weeks of rest. Unless you're going on the very extreme of that approach, that system where it's like train once every 2 weeks. Well, obviously, then your deload happened in between workouts, right?
Hmm. Yeah. There are different ways to accomplish the same thing, and I do really think that you can choose a deload strategy that is something you enjoy more. So what typically most people hate is they go from doing, sets of 5 to 12 between, 70 to 85% of 1 RM. And then their deload week, they just do half.
Eric?
Hey, buddy, I dropped out. Yep.
I
Can you hear
thought
me now?
so. Okay, I wasn't. I figured. But you were talking about the hack squat, so why don't I can edit that part out? So maybe we can pick up from the hack squats.
Yeah. So I think, what's the last thing you heard me say?
Hack squats.
Because I didn't say hack squats.
You did? I thought I heard
No.
hack squats. Oh, shoot. I thought I heard squats. Okay. But we were talking about 5 versus 4 versus 3 days per week and where deloads might.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to accomplish the goal of a deload. You can just take time off and then come back. And so the standard quote unquote deload is basically if you were training squats or hack squats, maybe whatever, and you were in the 5 to 12 rep range at like 70 to 85% of 1RM for that rep range, basically training at like a 6 to a 10 RPE the whole time. Then you come in for your deload week, you do half as many sets, and you're doing like sets of 5 to 8 at like 70 to 75% of 1RM. So basically training at like a 4 to 7 RPE. For most people who like the lift and like bodybuilding, unless they've really crushed themselves, that's just going to be boring. And they almost feel like, why am I even here? And that might be why they take the time off. I think there are ways to, like, if you really enjoy training hard in the gym, you can do deloads where you get to train hard, but it is still a deload. So for example, let's say you train 5 days a week and you push yourself pretty hard. And let's say you've got that, upper lower legs push pull split. Your deload can simply be an upper lower on Tuesday and Friday. It's one session per week, and you can go pretty hard. They can look pretty similar. I think some things you would want to avoid, like for example, if you're experiencing joint pain from your normal split, you wouldn't want to have a high load squat and a high load bench session, on your upper and lower days. But you can get around that by having a high effort, higher rep, lower load, some BFR and non-axial loaded movements, but you still get to go in there and bust your ass. That's something I have trended towards in recent times. So for example, this is actually a deload week for me. I normally train 5 days a week. It is Tuesday for me, and I normally train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I took Monday off. I'm going to train today, take Wednesday off, and I'm going to train Thursday and Saturday. So I'm going to go from 5 days a week to 3 days per week. And I'm going to do a few less of the big compound movements, but still do a lot of my accessories. So that's the way I like to deload for like a bodybuilding split. And other options are just to, take a week off. If you're going hard, crushing yourself, what we know is that there would be, minimal, if any, backsliding and hypertrophy. And anything that you did lose would come back really quickly from getting back into it. So I think you do need to be aware that if you have a process where your deloads are quite aggressive, like in just taking a week off, you probably should then have like an intro week when you come back, so that first week of training isn't balls out all of a sudden, because you're going to be really, really sore, because you actually will lose a bit of the repeated bout effect and you get slightly detrained just from having a week off. It won't be extreme, but if you ask any powerlifter, whether they get really sore when they go back to higher volume training after peaking and tapering, which is a process where you're barely doing any training in the last week, like a week leading up to the comp, you might do a total of 6 reps on the main lifts between, you're doing singles at like, 80, then 70, then 60% of 1RM the day prior, just a little primer, then you compete, right? And you're probably taking 24 to 48 hours off before the competition itself. And you're probably not training the day after the competition. So you've effectively had a very extreme deload in terms of the volume you can handle doing a taper for a powerlifting meet. And then often you're going, okay, new season, I'm going to get into some lower volume training, different stuff, and you get really, really sore. For people who take a week off and have a higher volume approach and like to train to failure, and they come in after that week off and they're like, oh, I want to get back into it, they're going to repeatedly experience a lot of DOMs in that first week, which is probably not ideal. So I think in those cases, you need to kind of, if you have a sharp drop off a cliff for your deload and recovery, then you need to start climbing up that cliff again before you do it again. So it kind of creates this necessity for an intro week, which could just be, still high effort, but 2/3 of your regular volume, or it could be your normal volume, but lower effort, whatever kind of gets you more motivated to train. So sometimes I think it's easier to describe what you don't want to do. So a lot of this has come from, we have it in the research, but the bros have been saying this since the 40s. You need more variety if you want to hypertrophy everything. So that doesn't mean you need to go full-blown muscle confusion.